Merle, welcome on in.
Thank you for having me, Rebecca. I'm completely delighted to be here. So thank you.
I'm delighted you are here. You and I were introduced by a mutual friend, colleague of ours, and I'm so glad that we did because I don't know, we're like twins in how
Oh,
we are
there
and
was
how we look at the universe.
a sense of connection, wasn't
There's
there?
a sense of connection
Um,
immediately.
yeah, immediately. It was a very good and a shout out to Holly. It was a
Absolutely.
really beautiful connection. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Holly, for
Thank you,
connecting us
Holly.
originally. So we're talking today about your research and we're talking about archetypes. And I would love to just take us back to when you sort of started exploring this idea of these leadership, essentially archetypes. Is that the way to describe them? Leadership archetypes?
Well, archetypes generally, I've put a term on the ones that I work with as leadership archetypes.
Yeah.
For women, as we spoke about. But archetypes now are much more inclusive. They're inclusive in terms of gender, age, ethnicity, linguistic group, cultural, which is why I love them. They really do feel inclusive. What Jung, who was a psychiatrist in the 20th century, for those that don't know, what he saw was, similar patterns, similar thematics, no matter where people were in the world. And what he began to talk about were the things that link us as humans rather than the things that separate us. And these things also have been going for millennia actually, gives people a way to appreciate why they focus their attention, where they do, why they do, where they don't focus their attention, the things that motivate them. And I think it feels for me that you can really appreciate all the elements of it, both the positive, they all have great gifts, and they all come with things we need to be aware of.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the actual research because I
Yeah.
remember when you and I first met
Yeah.
and we had that delightful cup of coffee together. You were talking about the fact that the research started off in a sort of a smaller way, if you like, with a smaller ambition, and then it just grew and it just grew and it just grew. So can you take us through that a little?
Very briefly, I had spent 6 months in the US and then 9 months in Melbourne. I was coming back to Sydney. And instead of, which is my kind of baseline, okay, what must I do? What's the next piece of work that's coming in? I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back home and I'm going to do something that will really interest me, where I'll be curious about it. And it's something that will really get me energized. And I thought I'll do a quick 3 month research project, interview a handful of women, both senior or what I call seasoned women and emerging leaders. I thought this was a great idea, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to road test my thinking. And I knew one of the senior lecturers at a business school down in Melbourne at Deakin University. And I had a coffee with Heather Round, and she listened. And I couldn't pick up the signs, I have to say, because I thought, this is not going very well. This is really not going very well. But actually, all she was doing was listening to me. It was an interesting thing for me to see how different people listen. And she said, I love it, but would you be interested in doing it under the auspices of the university? And I said, fantastic, I love it. Yes. So 3 years later, um, yeah,
Yeah.
with both emerging men and women and senior women here and in the USA. So a
Yeah,
fairly substantial piece of work.
absolutely. So talk to me about the key findings essentially from your research, Marl.
So I did something called grounded research, which is really allowing the research to talk to you. So when I did a million, like I always say, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, when I did my master's in psych, my research had a hypothesis that I was testing. In this research, it was grounded in what came back to me from the participants. So it's really interesting. You really are listening. You are in conversation with them. And what came out, and it's such an interesting thing, we were really looking at leadership identity, the narratives, the stories of both emerging and more senior women. One of the things, and I think it's probably the one I always bring up first, was leadership identity issues. So does who I think I am as a leader match what I think a leader should be? Was a huge issue. And it didn't really matter whether the people were emerging or senior. And that's not every emerging leader, not every senior woman, but it's really something that triggers a huge amount of identity challenge if they feel they're kind of off kilter with what they think makes a great leader. So that was the first one that was super interesting to come out of it. And the second one, which largely referenced by emerging leaders, but not exclusively, was the levels of generalized anxiety. And what is fascinating for me, because this was through the business school, I was not using my psychology. I wasn't going to explore that. And I had no questions on anxiety or worry. And it was like a deluge.
So it came up unprompted.
Absolutely. It was purely volunteered information.
Yeah.
And I think that would be so interesting in, 5 years' time to kind of do a little, I'm not preempting me doing another 3-year research, but be really interesting to see, because I think that the levels of anxiety have increased.
Yes.
Further.
I would agree. I would agree fully with that. And that's a really interesting concept. Just going back to your first point around leadership identity and, not necessarily feeling aligned with that, because it's interesting, because I think, leadership has so many different lenses and so many different definitions. I mean, it's the reason why there's something like 60,000 titles on Amazon about leadership, right? Because there are so many different, I suppose, structures and systems and processes that are connected to leadership. And I wonder whether that anxiety is connected to that because of what society's sort of vision, if you like, of what leadership actually looks like. And women feel authentic in that environment, because I have that conversation a lot with clients, right? I want to feel authentic. I want to feel like me. I don't want to fit into some mold of what a leader actually looks like. I want to do leadership how I do leadership. And research has shown time and time again that women do leadership extraordinarily well.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And so I think that the generalized anxiety and the leadership identity, these are all interlinked.
Yes.
But over and above just purely around the leadership identity, there was this levels of stress.
Yes.
Really, really unsettling. It was unsettling for me in some of those conversations where I thought, this is the scourge of our modern life. And what does this mean in our corporate life? And what does this mean in terms of leadership? And it kind of leads to the third one, where you said, I want to be myself. I want to be authentic. That came out, loud and clear. And I often talk about, instead of using the word authenticity, only because I think often these words, which are beautiful to begin with, kind of lose their energy, really.
Yes, I agree.
It's about being genuine, because I think that's what we're looking for in our leaders.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our leaders are looking to also show up in a way that feels, truthful and genuine. And I think there's a second part for anyone who's in marketing. Any disingenuous brands kind of lose it. Leaders who have pretense are just not going to be the ones that we are choosing to follow.
Yes.
And I think with younger leaders, that's an expectation that you're showing up.